My name is Barbara Schulter. I'm with the League of Women Voters of Champaign County. And in collaboration with the University YMCA, we're presenting the Census 101. You're in for a treat tonight. Some great speakers. We'll be talking about national issues. We'll be talking about state, county, and what the local community is doing here in Champaign and Grand area. The purpose of our program today is actually threefold. We want to inform you about the 2020 census and some of the facets to it. We are also brainstorming later on. I hope you can all stay for that with you, the audience, and I'll introduce that later. And we'll be talking at that time. We answer 2 questions when we get into small groups and talk about that. And then finally, our third purpose is to identify those people who may want to, or organizations who may want to be more involved with volunteering and helping getting the count out, as they are phrasing it, to especially some of the older counties, historically undercounted populations. Today in the audience, we have people from municipal governments here, library, healthcare, community groups, interested public folks coming in. And the woman who contacted probably many of you is Karen Prescott. She emailed you all the information, and she was the one that got you to come here. Unfortunately, she's out of the country right now, but she did wish us well, and was glad. I will tell her that we have a great turnout of the folks that she contacted. The program agenda, just so you know what's going to happen here, we're going to have 3 speakers who will be talking, I think, on national issues, state and county and local. That panel will then hang around for question and answers. And if you haven't picked it up, I think Michelle is handing these out. There's index cards. For the sake of moving along, since we have 3 parts to this program, we ask you to write your questions down once you hear our speakers, and we'll be glad to read them to them, or they can read it and then answer your questions to the best of their ability. And then finally, the brainstorming session, which will be getting into groups to talk about the 2 questions that we presented. Just a little bit of housekeeping quickly. We're going to be, if you haven't found it already, the restrooms are, as you walk in the northernmost door here, the men's is straight ahead, don't walk the stairs, it's all on one floor, and the women's would be to your left, down the hallway just a little bit. I mentioned the index cards. Also in your seats you have the YMCA's community survey, and I think Gloria will be talking a little bit more about that. And also the volunteer sign-up sheet, which is the green sheet. And then if you'd like to fill that out, if you're interested in getting involved in the database for volunteers to help with the census counting, we have boxes at the entrance table down there for you to submit that. All this will be confidential. We will just confidential, and then we'll be submitting it to community groups. Just be aware of that. Also, if you haven't noticed, this is being videotaped. We will have this videotaped on the League of Women Voters website, and you can go to the League of Women Voters ChampaignCounty.org and take a look at that. And you'll be on it. We're also live streaming this event. If you do need to have Wi-Fi, we have that information in the back desk as far as the password. Trying to go through my hand. The reason why Bobby is standing up here, she is going to be telling you a little bit about the need for people to help out with the census. These are jobs, so if you're not interested, perhaps there's someone in your circle of people that you know might be interested in a job.
Hi there.
Hello there. Can you hear me?
I am not authorized to speak for the census, so let's make that clear. But you all know, I think, that in order to have an accurate count, we have to have people working. So the census pays a competitive wage. In this county, it's paying $15.50. That's the bottom rate. If you're like a crew leader at 17. And there will be jobs from now until early 2021. The main operation where they're going to need a whole lot of workers is next year after Census Day when people are coming back to reform. So those jobs start in May, and may go as long as the end of August. I can speak from my own experience when I first did the census in 1980. That's how long my job lasted. Other jobs might last 4 weeks, 6 weeks. A lot of different jobs. So I have the information. I also have a computer in case anyone wants to start the application process. And I'm holding up this poster because I have a bunch of these. If you have a place, an office where you can put one up, come see me and I'll get one put up. And I have a little bit of swag, which is 2 pocket folders and some cookies. So come see me. I can give you information to put out at your place of business or to pass on to friends or even for yourselves. And this is a great retirement job. So, thank you. Thank you. Okay.
Can everybody hear me?
A little louder.
Can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
All right. I scared myself a little. Unless there's any housekeeping questions, at this point I'm going to introduce our panelists. The first one who will be starting it out is Dr. Dowling. She's an associate professor in the Department of Latina and Latino Studies at the University of Illinois in Champaign. She's published articles on Latino racial identity, construction, and racial attitudes in a variety of journals. Her research has focused on the U.S. Census and how definitions of race and ethnicity are understood by Latinos. Her book, The Mexican Americans and the Question of Race, explores the disjuncture between federal definitions and regional construction of race, examining Mexican American responses to the U.S. Census race question. She is currently the chair of the U.S. Census Bureau National Advisory Committee on Race, Ethnic, and Other Populations. And she's been on the committee for about 5 years. And her current research project focuses on Latinos and how they feel about the government and the census. Julie?
Thank you. All right, so thank you so much, Barbara, for that wonderful introduction and for inviting me to be part of this today. So as she said, I'm a professor at the university and I research the census. I'm a huge census nerd. And I also became invited to be involved with the Bureau's National Advisory Committee. So what the committee does, as I just mentioned briefly at first, no, maybe not. How do I make it move? It's not my computer. Technical difficulties, please hold. Okay. Oh, right here, down here I click. No. Okay, well, while she's trying to get the slide up, basically the National Advisory Committee, there we go. So what did you hit? But I did hit that. It just stay here because it likes it. It likes it, doesn't like it. So basically the National Advisory Committee, I'm the chair of that this year. I was vice chair last year. I've been on it for 5 years. And so we meet regularly at the Census Bureau in DC twice a year to and have calls and briefings in between to advise them on hard to count populations. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that, about what are hard to count populations, what do we mean by that, and also just start with why the census is important in the first place. Okay, it's working. All right, so why is the census important? Well, you're all here because you know this is important, right? But why? Why is it important? Allocation of federal funding. So in Illinois, even a 1% undercount would result in the state losing $19,557 per year for a decade, resulting in almost $200 million loss. It's a lot of money, just a 1%. And so these numbers are from the Illinois Department of Human Services website, by the way. So also, in addition to the tremendous amount of money that you want to get for both the state and your local particular government are the number of seats that Illinois gets in Congress, right? And so losing congressional seats are all tied to the number of people that are in your state. Also, redistricting lines are all around the proportion of people in the state that deal with representation in your state, basically as well, not just at the federal level. So who are the hard to count? And what do we mean when we talk about hard to count populations? We're talking about racial ethnic minorities who, for a variety of reasons, may not fill it out. Most of this is tied to issues of poverty and inequality stuff, right? And so think of it this way, right? The easiest person for us to count at the census is going to be somebody who owns their own home and lives there and has a stable residence and is middle class and all of these kinds of things, right? To whatever degree you don't get that, you're harder to count, right? If you're somebody who's lower income and you're moving around a lot because you've got housing instability, you're more difficult to locate and count. If you're somebody who is not educated about what this is about or distrusts the government because you're a racial ethnic minority and you maybe have some good reasons maybe not to trust the government because of past issues or issues you feel about the state, right? If you are somebody who is homeless, obviously you're very difficult to enumerate because it comes to a residence, and that makes it hard to count people. If you are an immigrant or undocumented immigrant, particularly, you might be fearful filling out the census because you feel like, wait a second, what's going to happen to this information? Am I supposed to fill this out, etc.? And yes, everyone is supposed to fill out the census, regardless of their legal status. It is a complete count of everyone living here in the U.S., whether a citizen or non-citizen. Young mobile persons are also difficult to count. They're moving around a lot, they're in apartments. Again, they're not having a stable residence. Another issue here is linguistic language minorities. Kind of skipped over that one there as well in terms of the ability to be able to read and understand the form. There is language assistance available, but that's an extra barrier for someone to fill it out. Children under the age of 5. And so there were about 1 million people who were missed in 2010 census who are children under the age of 5. 400,000 of those were Latino children. So nearly half of them basically Latino children. And that has to do with a lot of issues with people not understanding how they're supposed to count small children too, and they want to leave them off. Sort of it's kind of protective. They're like, oh, but it's just a baby. I don't want to list the baby, right? And so we do a lot of programming and work aimed at getting people to count small children. They often leave them off the census. There's a huge loss there in terms of our numbers. People who distrust the government, as I just talked about as well, and that's across the board. Because right now we're living in a time of tremendous distrust of government. Back in the 60s, it used to be like 75% of people said they trusted the government. Now, 17% less, and plummeting every day, right? And so people have a lot of distrust in government, and then because of that, when a form comes from the government, they're not sure if they want to fill it out, and they may not know what's at stake in terms of state funding, in terms of state representation. They're actually basically cheating themselves if they don't fill it out. Okay, so the census website, and I think that Gabe and Gloria, we'll talk about that. As well when they get to talk. There is a website called, or application called Rome that's on the census website where you can look up the particulars of your community by census tract and see what groups had low response rates in 2010 and what number of each of those kind of hard to count groups I was talking about, what number of racial minorities live there, what number of people who don't speak English well live there. So you can look up where you live or your communities and see how difficult was it to count my community in 2010. How many different groups that are considered hard to count live in my community. You can also, when the census is happening, they're going to be updating Rome with response rates, right? So you can see how your community is doing. The CUNY also has put out a hard to count map that some people like as well that similarly shows this kind of data. So both of those are good resources. And I think we'll be hearing more about exactly how to use that in an upcoming presentation here. So in terms of messaging, what you've got to get out there to people is to focus on the benefits of filling out the census form in terms of resources financially for their communities and in terms of representation. The other issue to assure people is that Title 13 protects their information. The Census Bureau cannot share their information with other government entities. Their information cannot be shared with immigration. Their information cannot be shared with the IRS. It can't be shared outside of the Census Bureau. And this happened because there were problems with this in the past. Many people still cite the issue with Japanese internment camps. The census data was used to locate Japanese Americans during the internment camps. Because of those breaches of confidentiality, they now have this in place that is against the law for them to share that information. Another thing that you'll be needing to put out there with people is that there's not going to be a citizenship question, thankfully. This was ongoing for the last year and a half, this desire to put the citizenship question on there, which would have really hampered our ability to count people and create a lot of fear and issues, right? And so there's not going to be a citizenship question, and their information is going to be secure and not shared with other organizations. One of the things that I wanted to talk about today, and Barbara left it kind of open for me to to talk about some big picture things and a little bit about some of my own stuff, is that Latinos are particularly difficult to count as group, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that. So Latinos are 17% of the Illinois state population, the largest group after sort of non-Hispanic whites, and there's a combination of factors that make it difficult to enumerate Latinos. Larger proportions of people who are Latino are more likely to be immigrants, and we just talked about how immigrants are less likely perhaps to want to trust and fill out the form. You've got more lower income persons are likely to be renting their homes or living in multiple family residences. So you also have situations where you have when people are low income and immigrants, many of them might be living in the same apartment, right? So they have multiple families. They may also want to fill it out just for the one family that's on the lease, and not for everybody else. But everybody else needs to be counted too, and that information is not going to be shared with your apartment leasing agents. It's only going to go to this one source, right? So getting people to understand that they need to fill it out for everyone who's living in that household. Also, Latinos are more heavily mobile and have a younger demographic with many children under the age of 5, as I've already talked about. So some current issues also around counting Latinos for 2020, the political climate, which is not the friendliest right now to the Latino community, with increasing hostility coming out in terms of anti-immigrant sentiments in the country, with the shootings that just occurred in El Paso, with massive raids and deportations that are happening. This is making people very fearful. My current research right now focuses on this, and interviews with Latinos in the Chicago area as well as in California about how they feel right now about government trust, and about how they feel about things like the census. So I'm working on this particularly right now. So you've got growing distrust of government and fear of deportation for immigrants. So the two challenges that I wanted to just address briefly today are also the race and Hispanic origin question and the aftermath of the citizenship question. So this race question, I'm not sure how many of you remember getting your census in 2010, but on the census, race is asked in a question format like this, right? And so I'm going to just talk about, this is more of a, as opposed to getting people to fill it out, this is a difficulty they encounter when they fill it out, right? So the race question is particularly challenging also for, so you've got issues of not wanting to fill it out in the first place, and then you also have issues of when I get to the form, how do I answer this question? So the race question, we have a separate Hispanic origin question that asks, is this person Hispanic, Latino, Spanish origin, and then asks for Mexican, Puerto Rican, Cuban national origin. Then what is this person's race? With white, black, various Asian origin, national origins, and then some other race category. So we've got the Hispanic origin is separate from race for a long reason that I can't get into too long of today, but if you want to know more about it, I'm happy to talk to you in the Q&A. But basically, in answer to the race question, about half of Latinos say that they're white, and the other half are saying other race, and writing in, Mexican, Latino, Hispanic, Puerto Rican, whatever their background is in that. Because there's no other box basically for us to put there, right? And so essentially we've had a number of issues with people not knowing how to fill out the question. This has led to a low response rate for that question in particular, which then leads to sometimes follow-up and people coming to your home to ask you that, which then frightens people, right? So basically you got 13% in 2010 just didn't answer the race question at all, and they didn't see themselves in the question, and another 37% answered other race. So fully 50% are not giving what the census considers to be a racial designation. So this was something that I wrote my book about, basically. So I interviewed people in Texas about how they filled out this question and looked at the link between what they checked and racial ideology. So I'm from Texas, I am Mexican American, and I was really interested in why 2/3 of the state said that they were white on the census when they're not, right? And the answer was a defensive whiteness. It was like, I'm an American, please accept me as American. It was defensive whiteness and not assimilation like people thought that it was, right? And so basically, this is an issue that will then hinder people from filling it out sometimes because they don't know what to answer for this. That creates a barrier, and they're not sure what to respond, and sometimes they then don't answer the question. So we've got, it's been confusing, at least I need to leave the blank, and I already talked about this, 13% of Latinos didn't answer it, and 37% said other race. So multiple studies have shown that when we moved to a direction of having a combined question format that we tested, that the answers were much, much better. So back in 2010, the Census Bureau did something called an alternative questionnaire experiment. So basically, like multiple households received differently looking questionnaires in 2010 with regard to the race question. They're trying to figure out a way how to solve this issue for Latinos and also for Middle Eastern people, because there's also no box for them as well, right? And so they basically tested out multiple formats where you kind of had a check all and apply format. So you had white, black, all these groups, and you also had Latino, Hispanic in there and Middle Eastern, and you could just check off whatever applied to you. And so this was tremendously successful in terms of how people responded to it, how different focus groups responded in interviews, as well as the advocacy groups were very happy with this format. This is what the Census Bureau put forward back, I guess it was a year and a half ago, that they wanted to see on the census for 2020. 2020. You'll know there's white, and then each of those groups there's 6 different ethnic origins, and you can't read it where you're at. This is German, Italian, Irish, Polish, etc. Under Latino Hispanic has the Mexican, Puerto Rican, Cuban, etc. Under Black African American, we've got African American, Nigerian, Jamaican. So each group has a major subheader and different groups. Part of the move to this was also about equity. The way in which the census was structured, they basically asked Latinos where you're from, and Asians what country you're from. But what about white people and black people? Well, we just assume that they're from here. And unless you're Native American, you're from somewhere else, right? And so basically we were assuming that white people and black people were just from here. And so this created an equitable way to ask about race that basically allowed everyone to have a header and an ethnicity within that, right? So they put this forward, the Census Bureau wanted to do it, and then let's just say we had an election and a change in administration, and then we didn't get to do it. So 2020 is going to look like this, where it just has the same Hispanic origin question, are you Mexican, Puerto Rican, Cuban, followed by a race question. The race question will have ethnic options for whites, blacks, etc., but will not have Hispanic origin or Middle Eastern. So we're still going to have the same issue where Latinos don't know what to answer for the race, they don't have an option on there happening for 2020. We will have white and black people ask what they are, which is a step in the right direction. People can indicate ethnic origins there, but this is basic. So that's another thing that you'll encounter, especially if you end up maybe working as an enumerator or trying to help, is people will be like, what do I answer here, okay? If you do get that question from somebody, the answer is whatever you would like, right? There's an other race thing there, and please feel free to mark whatever you would like on there for what your identity is. Okay, so wrapping up here, many Latinos are going to still struggle to answer their race as a Middle Eastern individual. The citizenship question is not going to be on the census, but we've had a year and a half, basically, of news coverage of this. And so it's right there in people's minds. And so there was a lot of stuff in the press that was like people saying they would boycott the census, etc. And I'm like, no, that's the wrong answer. Don't do that. I understand the sentiment, but that's not a good idea, right? Saying, I'm going to boycott this and not answer. So we're going to have to fight against the desire people have that they are done with government and don't want to participate in government, and try to tell them this is how you make change happen if you participate in government and you be counted by your community. Okay, so we've got to have to counter that message. Also, just in terms of focusing, I'm sure the other speakers are talking about this, focus on Latinos and other immigrant groups that have been scared away by this media coverage, focus on the low-income, racial minorities, children, and other hard-to-count groups that are in your particular communities. Okay. That's all. And I'm turning it over to Awesome.
Let me introduce Dave Lewis. He is a planner from the Champaign County Regional Plan Commission. He received his bachelor's degree here at the University of Illinois in Champaign. He's worked for the RPC for the last 12 years. He's worked at municipal and city level plans for the county, and in transportation, and most recently, his work has expanded to the census and demographic planning. He's also a member of the American Institute of Certified Planners. Okay.
All right, thank you. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm going to talk a little about what we've been doing locally. Julie's presentation was great. I hope to kind of live up to that. We got the side out of the way of everybody. So one of the activities that happens nationwide, but at like a local level, is something called the Complete Count Committee, which is the CCC. And since we're in Champaign County, it's actually the CCC. So this program is key to creating awareness about census activities. It's a way to engage people from different groups in participating in as many ways as they can to get each person counted only once and counted in the right place. So the Chicago Census Bureau came down and did a training with us. I'm the coordinator for our CCC. And the Chicago office had 3 states to deal with in 2010 that they oversaw, and in 2020 they have 8 states. So not the same amount of resources as there was in 2010, but we're very grateful. We were told by other counterparts and other parts of the state to get your CCC training in when you can, so we did. And I'm going to talk about some of the groups that have been a part of that, that are a part of that. So we have 7 of our local governments, Champaign County, and I put up here also the population and households just because I'm going to touch kind of on some of the proportions for our hard-to-count populations in a minute. So Champaign County, so our ACS is American Community Survey. The latest numbers we have is that the estimate of population in Champaign County is 209,000 or so, and we have 83,000 households. So we have 6 major municipalities: City of Champaign, City of Urbana, Village of Rantoul, Village of Savoy, Village of Mahomet, and Village of St. Joseph. And then with Champaign County, that's a different representative than me, being on the CCC, they're also representing some of the smaller towns and then the unincorporated areas in the county. And beyond that, we have a number of outreach partners that are part of the CCC. Both libraries, Champaign Public Library, Urbana Free Library, have been invited and are we're working with them to get literature out there available to patrons. Champaign Urbana Public Health District, we worked with them before, and there is some state funding that the state is making available for outreach that they're doling out to different regions of the state. And public health is taking the lead on that just because they were a little farther along, so we were looking at doing that as well. We're continuing to planning to do that as kind of a sub recipient under them. The school districts, Champaign Unit 4 and Urbana School District 116. City of Champaign, not only the Planning and Development Division that's on the CCC, but their City Manager's Office, the Office of Equity, Community, and Human Rights, and then the Neighborhood Services Department are represented. There's a Champaign County continuum of service providers to the homeless, and so at RPC, not only do we do planning and community development, which is my division, but we have a community services division, so there's a representative there representing that continuum. And then we have Head Start, that's our other big division. And as Julie mentioned, how many kids, young kids were undercounted, we're definitely, have Head Start at the table. The Housing Authority, the Interfaith Alliance has been invited. Mahomet has a ministerial alliance as well, that's part of the CCC. The University of Illinois Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, the University Y, and I think I got the other groups. So. And then we've also worked with the clerk's office, Champaign County Clerk, the circuit clerk, and state representative Ammons. They've either come to us or we've had opportunities to partner at events, and our census representatives have met with them as well. So keep kind of adding on groups and partners, and it's been good. So just wanted to touch a little bit on 2010 versus 2020. In 2010, we had self-response rates in Champaign County of a self-response rate of about 80%, which means about 20% of households had to have an in-person follow-up. And then for 2020, one of the big things is that a lot of the census will be administered online. People will be mailed an invitation to fill out your form online, but some people will still get an actual questionnaire in the mail, and that will probably be more households in the hard-to-count tracts that may not be as likely to respond online, or maybe not able to respond online if they don't have home internet access. But every household will have the option of responding online, by mail, or by phone. And the invitations will start to be mailed out March 12th. So saying March 12th to 20 is the first period of invitations. And then people will get several reminder postcards. And if you don't fill out your form by April 27th, then that's when the door-to-door visits will begin. So our preferred participation is self-response. I think that's what we all want to try to do to help people feel comfortable and also enable them to be able to respond themselves. And then the idea is to complete your form based on your residence on April 1, 2020. So for students, we want to make sure they complete their address for their campus address in Champaign, Urbana, or Savoy, where they live, to make sure that their representative is living I'm just going to talk a little bit about some of the hard to count populations. I know Julie talked about that too. Where this map is from is the HTC 2020 website that used some of the CUNY data, and they're defining these hard to count tracts as census tracts in 2010 where the self-response rates were 73% or less. And that's because nationwide, that's the bottom 20% of mail back rates. So any tract that had 73% was one of those hardest to count. Illinois, there's an Illinois HTC index that's based on the CUNY data and the US Census Bureau HTC score. And it includes or covers characteristics commonly associated with the low response rate areas. And that's what I'm talking about on these few slides. So there's a number of populations that I included in parentheses where I could, some of the numbers for Champaign County, what these percentages are. So the under age 5, that's about 6% of our population. The young and mobile is 15 to 24 years old. That's about 27% of the population, so that's a really big one to try to reach. Then over age 85 is a little over 1%. The population with income below 100% of the poverty level is 21%. We have households receiving public assistance income, people of color, Hispanics. I know Julie talked a little about this, but what they're saying, we've got 6% identified as Hispanic, 14% Black, and 11% Asian. We have foreign-born population, 12%. Limited English-speaking households are about 4%. Persons who moved from an outside county here also considered a hard-to-count population. Adults who are over 25 who are not high school graduates, which is about 4%. People who are 16 or older who are unemployed is about 6% of our labor force. And then, not people-specific, but places that are renter-occupied housing units represent 45% of our households. And then other places that are hard to count are where there are vacant housing units. So the Census Bureau is going out right now and doing some of the address canvassing. And so if they find a unit to be vacant now, it may not be vacant in spring, or maybe there'll be some kind of construction, I don't know. So that could be an issue. Large or overcrowded households represent about 5% of the households. That's where there's usually 1.5 people, or where there's more people than you have bedrooms, basically. And then non-family households, which are people living with roommates they're not related to. And then these last two, population without internet access, measured at 13.5% of the households, or people without a cell phone data plan, since that would affect their ability or likeliness to complete the census questionnaire online. So we work with essentially everybody to some degree, but a lot of our programs, as I mentioned, cover either like Head Start is the under 5 population. We have a senior service program that would include people over 85 who are living independently. We have community service programs that work with people who make less than 100% of the poverty level, or that are receiving public assistance income. And then several other folks, also the WorkNet Center, we work with people who are unemployed. So we have ways within Regional Planning Commission to reach out to some of these hard to count populations specifically, but it definitely takes a village, a community to try to get the word out and assistance to everybody, all these populations in our community. So we have started some outreach as much as we can. In August, we had a table at the Taste of Champaign-Urbana. Gloria, myself, and a couple others. Wendy at the City of Urbana table at the Sweet Corn Festival. Just last weekend, we at RPC had our first family and community engagement resource fair at Hessel Park, and that was really geared towards Head Start families, families with young children, so it was a good place to remind people and give about the census, develop a forum for all the children, all the people in their household. And then we've been invited to the Expungement and Record Sealing Summit. They have a resource fair next month that's being put on by Rep. Ammon's office and with the clerk. And then there should also be an awareness walk from Head Start at Meadowbrook Park where we'll reach out to the young children population again. Okay. So again, we want to count everyone once, only once, and in the right place. And this is my contact info. I just left the census website up, and I'm going to turn it over to Gloria.
The speaker is going to be Gloria, and then she's the director of the New American Center at the University YMCA. The center helps immigrants to fully integrate into the American society and prepares receiving communities around Champaign County to be welcome and included. Gloria has her master's degree in social services from the University of Chicago and her bachelor's degree from the University of Illinois in Champaign. Gloria, I know she's going to be covering a lot of what her community group has done with regards to reaching out to the communities for action.
Hello everybody, good evening. My name is Gloria and I'm really going to zoom in a little bit more on how we have been locally organizing around addressing a specific subset, the immigrant community, amongst all of the different hard-to-count communities. And I know that there are a lot of representatives from a lot of different entities and organizations here today, and so I'm just going to tell you a little bit about what we've been doing, and hopefully you can pick up some ideas from there tonight. So first off, just a little bit of context. I'm at the University Y, which I think many of you are familiar with based on your faces, but we're an organization in the community that works to develop student and campus leaders who are really engaged in dialogue, reflection, and action in the arenas of social justice, global engagement, interfaith collaboration, and also environmental protection. One of the programs that has kind of come out in the past couple of years through our social justice and global engagement initiatives has been our New American Welcome Center program, which is part of a national pilot program being conducted by YMCA of the USA. So like Barb was saying, we do a combination of direct and referral services, primarily with a focus on low-income and indigent immigrant communities amongst us. And we also do a wide range of different community convening and bridge building activities. And so one of the things that we did about a year ago in May of 2018 was we released a snapshot report about the economic and demographic impact of immigrants in Champaign County. And there are a few copies of the report in the back table, but what the report is based off of is U.S. Census Bureau data. And it takes estimates from sample surveys from the 2011 and 2016 American Community Surveys. And what does it tell us? It tells us that in 2016, we had about 24,000 immigrants right here in Champaign County. Of those, 14,000 are not part of the campus community. That's 14,000 people who are living, raising their families, sending their kids to school, working, etc. in our communities. And so we really want to make sure that both on and off campus, our immigrant communities are really represented in the census. So why are immigrants a hard-to-count community? This is something that both Julie and Gabe have touched upon a fair amount, but just to reiterate, they straddle a lot of different hard-to-count experiences. So some immigrants come from, fall below the poverty guidelines. Some immigrants are living in shared quarters. Others may be undocumented. Others may have limited English proficiency, and really many of them distrust the government. Another factor is the digital divide. So like what Gabe was saying about 13.5% of households in Champaign County not having home internet subscriptions in the period of 2013 to 2017. That means that a lot of immigrants in our community, and the 13.5% is everybody, but a lot of immigrants in our community don't have ready access to reliable internet. And with this being the first digital census and with a big push to have people take it online, not only is it an issue of access, it's also an issue of digital equity and knowing how to use the resources at hand. Yes. Sorry. Okay. Try to stand still. And then, of course, there's also limited English proficiency. So about 3,700 households in the county are at limited English proficiency. Most of them come from Asian American Pacific Islander backgrounds. Next is 712 Spanish households, 578 Indo-European, and 121 that fall in other. Again, going back to what Julie was saying about the citizenship question, and also just what has happened with the administration with regards to putting up an invisible wall. Immigrants are really anxious right now. They live in a state of fear. There really is a chilling effect overall, not just with regard to the census, but how that manifests upon the census is people just don't know what the government's going to do with the census. They're not sure that they can trust, even if we tell them, and we're trusted community service providers, that their information is going to be secure. How can they know to trust that? So that's something that we're going to be trying to overcome. Another big thing is actually misgivings related to the disclosure of items like gender identity, housing status, household income, and also racial and ethnic identification. And so that is actually something that we're seeing right now, pre-census, through our community survey that you have in front of you. So what the Welcome Center is doing is, one of our initiatives is developing a welcoming plan for Champaign County in coordination with a lot of local stakeholders. And what we're trying to do is basically establish some baseline markers of immigrant integration in our community. And what we found with our survey is that, a lot of the, and it's different from community to community, but the primary questions that people have trouble answering or skip are anything to do with income or household size, things like that. And finally, public indifference. It's hard to care about things that you don't know should matter, right? And so just trying to do some education around that. So what we've been doing in order to address some of those things is that there is a coalition of private funders statewide organized under Forefront that released an RFP earlier this year. And so since April, actually, a group of local immigrant advocacy and service-based organizations in tandem with the cities of Urbana and Champaign, the Regional Planning Commission, have been meeting together on a monthly basis. And so our 3 goals are to focus on increasing self-response rates, ensuring a coordinated staff, safe, and accurate count, and also furthering the work of community engagement. And so this isn't just, the end goal isn't the completion of the census, but the end goal is really to really build up our community. And ultimately, we want to emphasize the fact that the census is safe, important, and easy. So if you're in here and you're part of that Illinois Campaign Committee, you can just raise your hand so people can recognize you as a resource. Coeli, Wendy, Gabe, okay. So some of the initial actions that we've undertaken that you may want to think about with regards to the groups that you may be forming are, like I mentioned before, we've been meeting monthly, and that really helps us just to make sure that we're in communication with each other, that we have an opportunity to really be educating ourselves. And so that is what actually we spent probably the first 2 months doing, just understanding what is the census, what is at stake, and how do we convert that in a meaningful, culturally and linguistically competent manner to the different communities that we're serving. We also spend a lot of time looking at a lot of that CUNY data, and so I definitely recommend, I don't remember the URL,
I don't often.
but just look up CUNY hard to count map. It has a lot of really cool ways to hone in on the state level, on the county level. You can put zip code overlays and really nail down different types of hard to count factors, also by legislative districts. So it's a lot of really interesting information. We also have just been doing a lot of resource sharing with one another. And so given the fact that immigrants are straddling, like I said, all those different hard to count factors, one person, one organization can't really cover them all, and there's a lot of nationwide entities that are working on these initiatives already. So groups that are addressing 0 to 5, that are addressing low income, that are addressing people with different cognitive disabilities, for example. And so what we're trying to do is hop on different webinars and during our meetings, share those resources with one another. And then also just making sure that we're connecting to resources, both locally and also with the Census Bureau. So at our last meeting, we actually had, thanks to Gabe Inchel-Choi, who is our regional partnership specialist for Champaign County and the surrounding area, come and speak to us. And so he's a good name to know, and if you're forming a committee that you might want to get in touch with him. And finally, like Gabe was saying, we have begun community engagement and education, and so things like doing educational events like this, tabling at different resource fairs, festivals, festivities. There's a lot of fall stuff happening, a lot of opportunities to get information out. We've also, through the grant, been able to hire 3 outreach leaders from within the immigrant community, representing the communities that we see the most often, so including someone from the local Chinese community, from the local Congolese community, and from the local Mexican community, and the different organizations that we partnered with, like the Refugee Center and Dowry Tree Ecosphere, like I mentioned before, have kind of their own connections to different pieces. And then I mentioned this, I think already, but just we are continuing to develop communication tools and strategies, and honestly that's been a little bit tricky for us just because of the deluge of information and how much information is actually necessary to give to someone in a localized manner that is relevant to their specific community. So that is something that we started in April, and I wish I had handouts for you tonight, but I just don't. Hopefully, give us a couple more months, but that's just so you know. Something else that we've been starting to look at is with regard to bridging that digital divide. Is starting to look at, who are our partners in the community, like the local libraries, where we can have drop-in sites for people to have assistance filling out the census, have access to like large print keyboards, for example, other forms of assistance that are needed. And of course, we are continuing to pursue funding opportunities. And so make sure that you note that Champaign-Urbana Public Health District is the only applicant for regional intermediary for
Northeast Central.
Yes, Northeast Central Illinois, which covers 6 counties that I'm not going to remember, but Champaign, Vermilion, Ford, etc. And so where we all stand to benefit is applying as a sub-recipient. And so they submitted their work plan to the state last week, and our allocation in Northeast Central Illinois is between $500,000 to $695,000. And so each of your organizations can either individually apply as subrecipients to public health or combine together to apply. And so the contact that you'll want to have over there is Julie Pride, and I know that she wanted to be here tonight, but she wasn't able to make it, so I'm just giving a quick plug on their behalf. I think that's it.
Well, thank you to all of our speakers. The executive decisions, we decided not to collect the index cards, and if you do have some questions, please raise your hand, and we'll be addressing them to the, and you'll have to speak up. The traveling mic doesn't work, so that was one of the. It's working right now. So you did your head first back there.
I was wondering, is the census going to ask for people's social security numbers?
No.
That's not on there?
No.
Okay.
Name, address.
There are
There's
only
only 10 questions.
Any questions?
And
Yeah.
Social Security is out now.
Yay.
Do you want me to repeat the question? Hear this?
You can hear. Yeah.
Hi, Julie, I think you said that when someone says, well, what should I say for race? To say to them whatever you want. But will that result in a follow-up visit from.
They can mark other race and it will not result, the possibility of it resulting in another visit would be if they left it blank. Right? So leaving things blank means there's a possibility someone could call you or try to contact you to get the answer to that. They're not going to do it for every question, right? But basically there's a possibility that's there if it's incomplete. So there's no real risk there in like indicating that they can write other rates, they can check off whatever they'd like to. If something is marked there, then no one's going to be following up with it.
Okay, that was great.
Yes.
Thank you for clarifying that. One other question, there's a rumor, I think I've heard on the news, that the administration can go to the Census Bureau to get data on numbers of citizens and non-citizens.
That was something they were trying to do with the citizenship question, but there's no longer going to be a citizenship question, so they will not have access to that information through the census. There is an American Community Survey that asks a citizenship question. That data is publicly available, but it's not at the tract level in the way that the census is. Does that make sense? So that's part of the reason why there was no need to have citizenship on a census, right? Because it's tied to all these important things. You don't want to deter participation. They already have survey data that asks for citizenship. That's from a survey of the country, basically, that has general numbers about that aren't tied to specific tracts.
Okay, good, thank you. Should I just pass this around? Sorry.
You don't hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. My name is Claudia Lenhoff, and I work for Champaign County Healthcare Consumers. So we have a staff member who also works in the Champaign County jails. So I was just wondering about doing the census for folks who are in the jails and thinking if that's something that we can help with.
I want to answer it. Whoever wants to. Group quarters basically they'll be enumerated there where they are, basically in the jail, and so whoever is in charge of that. Oh, they can probably hear me. I'm really loud. I can talk. Okay. Yes, I'm not as loud as I thought. They're enumerated via group quarters, basically, and so they are enumerated by whoever the warden, I guess, or whatever of the location enumerates how many people are living there, and so they don't have to fill it out from their cell. It will be enumerated by the population that's living there. Is that? There's been all kinds of controversy over where people should be counted at, right? Should they be counted where they're from, or should they be counted? Right now, they're counted where their jail is, basically, as opposed to being counted for their location, where they're from, or something. They're basically counted where they are in jail.
Wherever they are on April 1st.
Yes.
2020. And that's actually, just to throw it back to Bobby in the back, so the Census Bureau is trying to hire, I think, for somewhere around 1,500 jobs.
Right.
And right now, to date, they've only fulfilled about 200 positions. About 300 positions, and so that's, go ahead.
They haven't all been hired, but they're about 300 in the pool.
Okay.
So, and you can't help with that because you have to be a sworn census employee to take the actual census data. So no volunteers are going to be able to go and do group quarters. You have to be a sworn census employee.
Right. So in terms of how that employee who goes into the jails could help if he wanted, or if they wanted to apply for a census position that would then send them as an enumerator, I think, into group quarters, that would be one way to do it. There are part-time and full-time positions available. It's flexible with regards to people who need to work evenings and weekends. And also, I think the pay is pretty okay. And we definitely need as many enumerators as possible. So, and just people applying for census jobs with connections to all of these different hard-to-reach communities. So even if not you, just to reiterate, Bobby, maybe someone in your organization or someone else you know.
I just wanted to add to that about the April 1st date. It's whoever is living with you on April 1st, right? And so there's something to also impress on people when they were like, well, who do I count? Do I count my granddaughter? If she's living with you on April 1st, then yes. You know, even if they just normally live there, or someone's staying with you, maybe they're having housing instability, or they're just living with you temporarily. If they are living with you on April 1st, you count them, basically.
Hi, my name is Esther Kath, and I've been working with tenants for years, and I have a big concern about students being undercounted, especially this time, because the big change since the last census has been the proliferation of locked apartment buildings where the tenants rent by the bedroom. So individuals think theirs a household, but their household is in an apartment with 3 other households. And I'm wondering what on the actual census form, you know, they only go to their mailbox once every 2 weeks, but when they get it, is there a clear instruction that all people who live in this, in your house or your apartment need to be listed on this form? Because I fear many students will, whoever gets it will fill it out for himself or herself and just send it back, and there will be an undercount, a huge undercount, because 3 out of 4 people won't get counted. What's it say on it?
I was gonna say that the instructions are going to say everyone living in your household on April 1st. Those are the instructions are going to say, but you're still going to run into similar issues of like when you have like multiple families living in one household, people interpret that as who regularly lives here, even though that's not what it says. And so basically it's part of the campaign and messaging, and people who out there enumerate need to be sure to explain to people it's everyone living here. And also to assure people that the information is not shared. So for example, if maybe you've got multiple living in that apartment, students, and you only have a certain person on the lease,
Right.
that person in your apartment manager is not going to get a copy of this, right? So count everybody who lives there.
And who's going to communicate? That's my question. How are, I know the answers to these questions. How are the people out there in the community going to know that you need to list the 2 extra roommates who aren't on the lease, that you need to list everyone who lives in the apartment even though you don't know them? How is that going to be communicated? What education?
So I think that's where we all come in with regard to community outreach and education. And so there have been discussions about, you know, is there someone within the U of I administration that we can reach out to that would be able to send out an email to parents, for example, who can then tell their students. Another thing is when our regional partnership specialist was visiting, he strongly encouraged us to reach out to the Chicago office collectively as a coalition from Champaign County to specifically request earlier non-response follow-up for our student population. So instead of the typical rollout, I think in June and beyond, for it to really start as soon as that non-response starts in May. And so we're looking for people who would be willing to sign on to a letter to that.
She's in charge.
Just to offer that same question, Mr. Choi, when he presented April 1st, 10 years ago, 42% of the students had been counted. They are severe. I mean, if your funding depends at all on population numbers, that's where your money is. We need to get the students, because otherwise, all of us suffer because of that. Messaging or not, somebody needs to do it, and for me, that needs to be too.
Yeah, and if you think that the federal standard of 73% as hard to count, and math, that was what Ricardo just said of 42, that's really crazy.
I have another student question, 2 student questions. What about students who are studying abroad and they don't get back till May 1st? They might be gone a half year or a whole year. I've got a granddaughter in that situation. And what about college students who live here in Illinois, their home address is here, or their permanent address is here, but they're going to school out of state, and they plan to come back, of course, each summer and then graduate?
All I can say, I'm going to start with, since we're telling students here to fill it out for your campus address, I think for your, I don't know if you said granddaughter or somebody who's out of state, they would probably fill it out for their campus address there out of state. I would think too, the person who would be abroad would fill it out for here, but I don't want to say that wrong.
Who would fill it out?
I'm thinking if they're living, let's say they're students, so their primary principal address is with their parents, and they're only abroad for a few months or something like that. I would think that would mean that their parents would probably count them, but I'm not 100% on that. That's a good question. I have to go back and ask about if someone is saying abroad internationally. I know they're supposed to be counted where they're living as a student, right? But whether or not their permanent address is still their parents, but whether or not they're out of the country, it would probably depend on how much of the time they're out of the country, like what percentage of the year is what I'm guessing, whether or not, or how they'd be counted. And I'm guessing it would be the parent that would fill it out for them if that was the case.
I'm going to be able to take one more question. So we can get into what.
Are you guys aware of any media campaign by the Census Bureau
Because we can talk to our clients as much as we can, but if they see something on television of how important it is to answer questions, I think our approach will be easier. Are you aware of anything?
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's a bunch of messaging that's going to be happening as we're approaching the census. The whole tagline is shape your future. So they spent a lot of time workshopping this with us as a committee about what they thought would work for different communities. And this is what, was the outcome. And so there's going to be more targeting, messages, testing, and things like that they're going to be doing over the coming months, and then increasing that towards when they actually start to do the mail outs.
Just the timeline I've noticed is January, I think, is when you're going to start seeing a lot more of the media messaging.
And just to plug, if something that we've been throwing around in our meetings is potentially a kooky take on the CUMTD 20-year anniversary celebration video. If any of you have seen that, if you have not, you must look it up. It's an ode to not only MTD, but Champaign, Urbana. But really, it features a lot of different places, a lot of different communities, municipalities within the county, really celebrating the anniversary to a song, to Prince. And we're thinking about potentially adapting something local just to make it fun and memorable. So if you're interested in being part of that, or if you have people in your organization who are communications or digitally savvy, let me know.
Something I was just talking to Gabe about is a recommendation that our committee made to the Bureau, I think it was maybe last year, that we thought that in the hospital, since babies are so undercounted, that when you give birth, you should get something, basically like, they give you a lot of other stuff that you don't need when you give birth. Why don't they also give you something, basically that will be, reminding you to count the baby, and do something like that way everyone who gives birth, particularly in the spring, right, because that's when they're the most undercounted when they're in that first year, right, and so with major campaigns that are out to daycare centers in town, and these kinds of things that would allow outreach when you give birth at your baby's 1 month, 2 month, 3 month well babies. Partner with Carl and Christy and see if they can, give something out. Remember to count your child in the census. Like that would help a lot.
Okay, well, thank you very much. I hope you appreciated that information from the